G'day, Steve Morgan here from Australian Bass Tournaments and Fishing Monthly magazines. Right in the middle of summer at the moment, and anyone in Australia after the storms who's feeling the heat, who's feeling the humidity, knows that this is cicada time of year. This sound, you can hear that around every mangrove and bush covered stream, creek and lake in Australia at this time of year. And what that means is that the predatory fish and the scavenging fish living in these lakes, rivers and estuaries are looking upwards and looking to eat cicadas. Now, we all know what a cicada looks like. You can see a photo of one right here, but this is what an imitation cicada looks like. And the ones we're going to talk about today are the Tiemco branded cicadas. I've been fishing the Tiemco cicadas for years and years and have had great results in them in the various versions and sizes that they make. They've been a consistent performer for me over the years, so I think it's time that I share my love of cicada fishing with you. So let's get onto it. Tiemco, it's a Japanese brand. Of course, like every Japanese company, it's got the crazy logo, think in the field, for Tiemco. So I think if I hear cicadas, I'm going to be putting one on the end of my line. But Tiemco in Australia is distributed by EJ Todd's, great old tackle distribution company based in Sydney, looking after a lot of niche products for lure fishing anglers and in particular tournament anglers nowadays. So a big shout out for those guys for being an ABT sponsor. And there's two of these Tiemco cicada models that are really on my radar at this time of the year, and it sort of depends on the size of cicadas that are around where you're fishing. The first size is the tiny cicada trick trout. So the tiny cicada trick trout is actually the name of this lure. It's a small bait, it's only 34 millimeters long, weighs 2.7 grams, and it's got a hard body on it, but it looks just like a little cicada. It's available in half a dozen different colours, and for finessing bream and other cicada eating species like bass, this is the one you want to have, the little one. But when the fish get into total I'm aggressive and going to smash the cicada mood, then the soft shell cicada, so the Tiemco soft shell cicada, 40 millimeters, 4 grams, casts a little bit better, but it's made out of a really spongy, soft body material. Now that might appear to not make much of a difference, but when you hear one of these things landing on the water, it really doesn't splash down, it like pats down on top of the water, and it's a really natural presentation that the bream in particular that I fish for really love. Both of these models feature the folding soft wings, so of course this body shape, if that was rigid, that would be a real bugger of a thing to cast, but it has a couple of folding wings on it that fold up like this, so when you cast, those wings fold up, and they're actually very flexible. They're made of sort of the same softness of material that the body is. So those folding wings fold as that lure gets casted. When it lands, you give it a twitch, and then those wings open up, and as you wind it, it gets that real plip-plop, 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 the old jitterbug style retrieve going. Now that said, even though this lure makes that plip-plop, plip-plop all the way back in, for me that's not the best way to fish a cicada for a bream. Like all bream topwater fishing, I love to have a lot of pauses in the retrieve, and that starts from the second this lure lands on the surface. So I'm out there and we've got some cutaway stuff going here now showing you where the strike zone really is for a bream on a cicada. You want to throw it as close as you can to a dark shady area that's got a tree above it, because that's where the cicadas are often going to come to, and often the lee side of the shore where the wind's blowing into is a good bank to fish. One, because it's not chopped up by the wind. Secondly, that's where the cicadas are sort of getting blown into the water. Throw it close to the edge, let it sit for a little bit. You don't want to immediately plip-plop, 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 plip-plop that lure all the way out. Let it sit, let the rings dissipate, a couple of little twitches maybe, and one of the great advantages of this lure is that it doesn't move a long way when you twitch it. You twitch a bent minnow, it goes a long way. You twitch a cicada with these big resistant wings in the water, it doesn't move far at all. You can actually just sort of nearly shake the line, and this will sort of shake in the one spot on the surface, and it'll be a real target for fish that are below it. Like all bream topwater fishing, you will find that most fish hit this bait on the pause. And a lot of pauses in your retrieve are fairly essential for bream fishing with the Tiemco cicada. To the point where if I don't have 3 or 4 pauses in the first part of my retrieve, I'm probably fishing too fast for an Australian bream. With the 2 sizes, of course, keep an eye on what's around. If you're seeing lots of small cicadas, fish a small one. If you're unsure, fish a big one. If you're not getting results on the big one, swap to the small one. But definitely a couple of colours of each of these are necessary to have in the box. Of course, you can catch fish on cicadas all year, but the best time is when you hear them in the trees in summer. If you hear cicadas going, I can guarantee you that the bream, the bass, they know that that bait is there and that food is there. The louder the cicadas are, the more there are around, the more chance you've got of getting a bite. Now, tackle for cicadas, it's one of the few lures that I like using braided line for. So this is probably the longest rod I'd use for a cicada. It's a 7'4" with a nice soft tip for casting, but a strong middle section so that I can sort of set the hooks a little bit when the fish grabs it. It's got, say, a 6-pound braided line and a 6-pound monofilament, not a fluorocarbon leader on it, just because of those floating and stretch properties of that monofilament nylon line. The reason why you can get away with using a rod, say, longer than 6.5 to 7 foot is that you don't have to give this cicada much action. It's just basically a shake of the rod tip. That rod tip isn't moving very far at all, and that lure is going to get all the action it needs to attract the bream. The key to really fishing a cicada effectively, though, is knowing when to put the hooks into that fish. I take people out that are novices to cicada fishing, and their first instinct as soon as they see a splash where the cicada is to yank back and try and set that hook. Trouble is, most of the time a bream won't get a cicada when it eats it. It's very usual for a bream to come and have to hit that lure 3 or 4 times until it finally gets the hook in the mouth, and the whole secret is being able to see when that lure is underwater and in a fish's mouth to then put the hooks in. It's always better to wait too long than too short, because if you strike too early and yank that lure back out of the water, the pack of fish that are following it will probably lose interest and you won't catch any of them. If you leave it too long and don't set the hooks, they're going to drag that lure underwater, it might spit it out, and what's going to happen is another bream in that pack will come up and grab that bait. So always be more patient rather than less patient, and you're going to hook more bream on cicadas. Brands, of course, I don't really matter for this, but keep it down to that maybe under 7'4", and you're going to have no problems fishing these cicadas. And that's really all there is to it. If you hear them, get them, fish them, and enjoy fishing them, because it's a real visual sort of fishing. It works just as well when you're social fishing as it does in tournaments. And remember, we've got about a 3 or a 4 month window during the summer where we can do cicada fishing effectively. The website ejtodd.com.au, so you can see the full colour ranges and the full range of cicadas that toddies do. These aren't the only 2 cicadas that are in the Tiemco range, but they are the 2 that are my favourites, and there are about 6 or 8 different iterations of this bait that may be suitable for your area. And of course, if you like social media and you may be watching this on Facebook, make sure you like EJ Todd on Facebook to catch up with all of their new product updates, because they've got some really cool stuff coming out for tournament fishermen.